All right, we're getting ready to start a three-part series with some of the best lifting training nerds I know. We're starting off with Brandon Smitely from Thirst out of Terra Haute. Great dude, background in wrestling and lifting, been coaching kids, pros, you name it, 10 times body weight total in powerlifting. He's an elite lifter and consultant with Elite FTS. He's one of the smartest guys probably around in Indiana, and one of the main guys that, along with Shane Sweat, that taught us how to box squat at Unbreakable Athletics. So a lot to learn here. Hope you enjoy it. All right, welcome back to the show. Welcome to Athlete Builder, back in the library. I'm your host, Jim Beebe. Got my teammate, Lucas Lorian, and today's guest, Brandon Smitely from Thirst over in Terre Haute, Indiana. I've known Brandon a few years off and on. We haven't really worked together that much, but it was years and years ago when I first met him. We were hosting a competition, and he came in. I think he was one of the vendors with some food supplements. And then I learned more about Brandon, talked to Dan Brown at a Lift Lab. He mentioned Brandon because Dan and Brandon and I have a Purdue connection, and I found out more about Brandon's powerlifting. Added some more strength and conditioning with our student athletes. Next thing you know, I'm having Brandon back to help us with some box squatting. So I've been watching Brandon from afar, and essentially whatever he puts out, the content-wise, is excellent. I've learned tons. My wife's learned tons. Coaches from our facility have learned tons. So we're happy and grateful to have Brandon on for this next hour to learn a little more about what he has going on, his trials and tribulations with his own training or working with athletes. So welcome to the show, Brandon. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's I was trying to think back as well. The first time I met you, it was I was actually working like part time with Quest. I can't remember how I got into that, but basically they were sending me product just to go to gyms and meet up with other Quest people, and essentially we would go to competitions like what you had, and sample out. At the time, they were only doing the protein bars, and I think they may have had drinks, but now obviously they got chips and all that other stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how we met, which is kind of weird.
I ended up eating a lot of Quest bars for years, and they have the normal amount of calories and protein, so that was good. They tasted good, so I was like, all right, well, this seems to work fine.
Yeah.
And when I first saw you, you came from behind the booth or the table with your Quest products, and I saw you walking away, and I thought, man, that dude is calves are like the size of my legs over here. Like, what's going on? Like, what's his background? And I find out elite level power lifter, 132 pound weight class, totaled over 1,300, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
essentially,
My best total was 1377.
so that's a little more than 10 times body weight total,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I think I
Is that
broke 10 times body weight either in 5 meets, 6 meets, something like that. So I did it consistently. Once I
that's
broke it, I think I broke it every time. I mean, I don't think I ever regressed underneath 1320 once I hit it.
dang. Mm. So for me and everyone else involved, let's bridge the gap a little bit. You went to Purdue for undergrad, right?
Correct. Yep.
Before that, you were in high school, but you grew up in the Terre Haute area, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I went to Terra Haute South High School.
And then was your main sport wrestling?
That is correct. Yep. I only did one sport in high school, and that was wrestling.
So from there, take us through that. I'm an athlete doing wrestling, light, lean, fast, quick, to powerlifting, which, when you're moving heavy weight, it's very, very slow, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously speed components and all this and that, but how do you go from wrestling to powerlifting, or talk us through that and how you progress from middle school, high school, and the college and beyond?
So actually, after wrestling was over, I did some like coaching on the side, but I wanted to go to college, but just nothing was really there for me, and for me, I valued my education more. So I actually ended up getting an offer to go to University of Wisconsin La Crosse to wrestle, which is a private Division III school up in Wisconsin. But and they were at the time they were the Division III national runner-ups, so they had multiple national champions at the Division III level. And for me, it just was not worth the monetary value to pay 25 to 30 grand a semester to wrestle, which just didn't make sense. I wasn't the, I mean, I like numbers, and I just knew it didn't make sense to go to $250,000 in debt just to wrestle. I wasn't going to make a
Sure.
living off wrestling. You could argue that maybe I would have got a national championship with a team, and maybe able to be a coach in wrestling. But that didn't make sense to me. So initially, I actually wanted to be an athletic trainer, not a strength coach. And UW Lacrosse also would not let you be an athletic trainer and wrestle. So that's kind of what ended up nixing it. Like I was like, I can't do what I want to do from an education standpoint. I'm not going to pay the high price tag and then just to wrestle. So that's what ultimately led me to Purdue. Was because through my dad, I had a grant on top of scholarship money through high school. So I had an undergrad degree completely free, completely paid for. And so it made sense to go to obviously a higher quality institution like Purdue to further my education. And then that's what ultimately got me into, believe it or not, I actually went to bodybuilding before I went to powerlifting. I loved lifting weights. I was already small. I was already lean. And to me, bodybuilding training was pretty simple. I loved to read all the magazines and all that kind of stuff before the Instagrams of the world. And when I was actually at Purdue, I was training for a show, and a guy that I worked with at the rec center was like, have you ever heard of this thing called powerlifting? Like, you're squatting 375 for sets of 5 at 130 pounds. What's the point of being lean when you're already strong? So we looked up on, I think then it was called Powerlifting Watch, where they kind of had where the numbers would be for my weight class. And I was like, man, I could be good at this. Like, I just got to cut weight and go do it, which obviously I had to learn the standards of the lifts. So after a couple bodybuilding shows, I started to direct it towards powerlifting because I was already squatting, benching, and deadlifting. Like, I had already learned enough that those were the 3 core strength movements that need to be in almost any program. And so my friend at the time, Jeremy Smur, and then also Ben Tipton, I'm not sure if you know either one of them from Purdue, they kind of nudged me to start training that way. And then basically the rest is history. I started reading T Nation, which then led me to Westside and Louis Simmons, Dave Tate, Eric Cressy, Tony Gentlecore, Mike Robertson. I mean, you start naming all these names. Almost everyone that I learned from was a T Nation member. And then ultimately that led me to being a consumer of Elite FTS in terms of products. And I started buying and reading all of their stuff. I just kind of went down the weeds. And then once I learned about powerlifting and specifically the conjugate system, that's essentially where I started going out to Elite FTS more because I was able to get out to Dave and somebody that's been around there. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Gotcha. All right, Brandon, looks like we're back at it. So
Okay.
With bodybuilding, when you were at Purdue, did you actually do any shows?
Yeah, so at the time, all the shows I actually did were here in Terre Haute. So I would come back down and do the shows here. Indiana State used to have like I don't know if it was ever sanctioned through NPC. I don't think it was, but it was actually judge scorecard. It used to actually be big way back in the day, like back in the 90s. It was one of those shows where there'd be 30, 40 people. This was before obviously all the classes too. At the time I did it, there was usually about anywhere from 15 to 20 people, and they actually did it through like height classes, not weight classes. So that's kind of how I got into it. Just I had the allure, and obviously being in my backyard, I actually had a former IFBB pro help me with some of my nutrition and training. Gary Passmore, he was built very similar to me. He was maybe 5'2", and he would do bantamweight shows. If you ever get a chance to Google Gary Passmore, I mean, he was a rock. He was huge. And he helped me with like my nutrition, especially getting closer towards shows and whatnot. But he would also give me an idea of, where my calories needed to be in the off season, what I ideally wanted to try to weigh before I started cutting to get down to show level. So that's kind of the only shows I did. I eventually did that show for enough years that I went from not looking very good to going in completely drug free and smashing everybody. And then that was the last year I ended up doing it. The year after that, I wanted to do it, but I started to get into powerlifting, and there were a little bit of conflicting interests, obviously, between nutrition and training. Like you can do both. I'm not saying you can't, but if you want to do one at a high level, and I actually like the powerlifting portion. The dieting part was not my cup of tea, I guess. I liked the training part more than the nutrition. And if I could just stay around where I was and just cut a little bit of water weight to do powerlifting, that made more sense in my eyes for what I liked to do. So that's kind of how I ultimately ended up making that decision.
Yeah, there's both are critical, the lifting, the training, and the nutrition. But from what I understand, with those bodybuilders, man, they're angry for a long, long while.
Yes.
Dieting down to that weight and then cutting the rest of the water out too.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
lowest my calories got at one point was right around 1,000 to 1,100. I
Yeah.
remember being in classes eating because obviously that's the other hard part is being in class as a college student. There are a lot of times that I would eat tuna and salsa and like maybe I think it was like 9 or 10 almonds. Like that was a meal, and like that's terrible. That's not. I mean, healthy foods, but super low calorie, minimal fat, minimal carbohydrates. I mean, you could tell it was just about keeping protein levels where they needed to be so you don't lose muscle mass, and then the rest was to hopefully help you, not have fat. And then that was actually recommended by somebody for college because one, it's relatively cheap, but then the salsa and the tuna are pretty high in sodium, so it makes you want to drink more water. But when you go to work out, you can still kind of get a pump because you've got sodium levels. But if you don't have sodium levels, then it gets really hard to get a pump, and that makes training feel like really crap. Which, knowing what I know now, I usually drink element packs every day. When I have sodium, I feel better. When I don't have sodium, I don't feel as good. So, I mean, there was something to that before these big electrolyte companies started kind of get into that. I'm sure if you talk to Stan Efferding or somebody like that, they would agree that the bodybuilders have been onto this well before us. So,
Right. Sodium holding into water.
yes.
Muscles needing some water.
Yes.
So they can do what they want to do. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. The overall just total basics. Then powerlifting is just more fun because you move more weight and you're not as angry all the time.
Right.
You're probably just angry for a few key sets.
Yes.
And then and so once you get past some of those max effort sets and you get back in your accessories, you can calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So when was your first powerlifting meet?
2012. I did a push pull, and
When was your last one?
I walked in at 148 and did that. Like I didn't cut weight. Like I actually did enough research where everybody's saying for your first thing, don't cut weight. Just like walk in and do the meet and have fun. And that's what I did.
That's exactly what we tell people. If it's your
Yep.
first one or even your first two, you want to get used to it.
Yep. I think I bench
show up and
pressed
have a good time.
275. I was probably like 140, 145, 142 maybe. Can't remember what I weighed in at. And then deadlift, I think I pulled 465, I want to say, right around there. That's when I pulled conventional still, before I made the move to sumo. So that's where I kind of started at, which I think for a lot of people, if you look at those numbers, that would have probably been an indicator that I could be good. If I just walk in to try something and I'm benching almost double my body weight and pulling, effectively triple my body weight without good sound. I'm not saying my training wasn't good. Looking back, it was terrible. But honestly, for 2011 and what I knew for powerlifting, it probably wasn't terrible. But I was having obviously some kind of genetics on my side to be able to do that. So.
And then what was your most recent meet?
So my last meet was, let's see, full power would have been WPC Worlds in Louisiana, and that was the tail end of 2016. And that meet is where I broke my own world record in squat. I should have taken it on a third, but being a world meet, I was more worried about winning worlds than I was breaking the record. That's something that I always wanted to do, is win a world championship. So my third, I actually took like 545-ish, somewhere around there. It was in kilos. That meet was in kilos. But I ended up taking an optional fourth at 567 because that weight moves so well. I was 3 for 3. I had nothing to lose theoretically to take that squat. It doesn't count towards my total. So I broke that record. I hit 567 on that squat. Bench, I hit 330. So I tied my PR. And then on deadlift, I think I've got 501 at that meet. And the reason I took 501 was that was secured, I believe, a 10 or 15 pound total PR on a second attempt. My long shot goal was a total 1400. And so on that last deadlift, I actually made a jump to like 534, I think it was, or 529, whatever it was. I think it was 534. But either way, what it was, because I had that 545 is what counted towards my total, not the 567. If I would have had the 567, I would have had it. So depending how you want to add those totals up, technically I did, but so that last pull I had to make a 30-pound jump, and I missed it just at the knees. So and that's where I had problems. I knew that. So it was a long shot. I let my training partner make that decision. I said, hey, I've won the meet. I've won my weight class. I've won the light weights. I have the best coefficient from all the weight classes combined. Like I won best lifter. I have nothing else to lose. I might as well take the long shot pull. So,
Sure. Right.
And then that was my last full power meet.
And then when did you open Thirst?
That was legally May of 2018. Doors really opened June of 2018.
Okay.
So about a year and a half later.
Been running year and a half later. So you've been running the gym ever since.
Yep.
Not so much competing any longer, right?
Right. So I've had a lot of low back issues since competing. And when I was at Elite FTS this weekend, I was talking to a lot of people about this. That it looks like what I have, I won't let anybody do surgery. I'm anti-low back surgery. I think if you find anybody that's had one that hasn't had one, it's a literal coin toss. I mean, you get some people that have successful outcomes, but more cases than not, they still have some kind of issue. It might feel a little bit better, but it's never enough to actually get them back to what they want to do at the level they did. And so, but I was squatting with a cambered bar, and I'm obviously on the shorter side. So when I squat with a cambered bar, the plates are maybe 2 foot at the absolute most away from the ground. There were some plates just pulled forward on the monolift, and I hit it on the way down. It rotated me underneath. I had 425 and 140 in chain on there. So, I had a lot of weight on that bar that I was doing for sets, which I was actually going back to do a bodybuilding show. I had a bodybuilding coach for nutrition. I was going to take a year and a half to 2 years off, do some shows to give my body a physical rest. But that obviously didn't happen. Once I hurt my back really bad with that, I've had issues with that ever since. Squatting has never felt right. I deal with a lot of issues in compression from top to bottom, whether that be a deadlift or a squat. So I primarily belt squat and single leg work now for lower body, just because I get to 3 plates and my back does not like it. And I'll throw my back out doing hip switches sometimes. It's weird. So, but so that's ultimately what made me make the decision to not do full power. I don't feel that I can get back to where I was with those numbers, and I'm really competitive. So if I just start squatting and deadlifting, I'm going to feed the beast, and that's not good long term for me. So bench press though is pain free. So essentially, I do a lot of benching now in terms of competitive. I did one last year. I did bench 335 at 148 with no weight cut or anything. I just walked into a meet and did it just to try to chase a PR. So that's kind of what I do now from a competitive standpoint, is just usually benching. I would like to get in a shirt. I've done shirted meets in the past. Again, what I'm running into that is I'm not around equipped lifters. Equipped lifters dying. So when I go into my gym, I'm literally the only one that knows how to use a shirt, what it should look like. I can have people spot me, but getting eyes on me is much harder. And that now Elite FTS doesn't work with metal anymore, and all my stuff is metal. So I need to buy some new bench shirts, and I have to make the justification: do I want to spend $300 to $400 on a new bench shirt just to bench in maybe 8 more meets in my life for bench only in a shirt? I don't know if that's worth that to me. I'd much rather just do it raw at that point. So that's kind of how I'm at least looking from a competitive standpoint of what I do. And for me, mentally, running a business almost checks that box. Like there's always something you can do better, whether it be increase revenue, decrease expenses, new client acquisitions. There's obviously competitors. So to me, that kind of checks that box without me having to beat my body up physically. There's obviously some stress involved, but it's not like I have to worry about, did I lay the training out right? I can do stuff from home, but mentally, that's the way that I look at that.
So we have similar parallels. I would say that your lifting career significantly surpasses mine for sure. But so I went to Purdue, just like you did, and you were thinking about going to other schools for wrestling, but you ended up there because you valued your education. Well, I didn't really do a lot of sports in high school. Always wanted to, but was not really introduced at a young age, and didn't do much, and then didn't really get into it that much. Ended up going to Purdue for I wanted to have a better education, right? Fast forward a bunch of years later, I'm working in the finance world, and I'm like, things are working out fine there, but I really miss the opportunity when I was a little kid to work with athletes or be an athlete myself. So let's get some different certifications. Let's learn some different things. Let's talk to different coaches like you and Shane Sweat and go to a bunch of different seminars and just start with the basics with CrossFit. And I'll do my own lifting, my own competing, and to fulfill that need. But I'm a bit older. I'm 48, and at 45, I was told, "Hey, you're done." Also, as I turned 45, I had fractured my foot doing heavy farmers carries and with a yoke carry medley, and then from there, I also tore some ligaments in my hand. Then after I get out of the boot, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fine. Right, the foot has healed, but I don't pay attention to the fact that my gait is a little bit off or that my hips are a little bit rotated from being in the boot. And though things were feeling fine, I started working my way back up with basic squatting. I'm doing a dynamic effort day, and I could just feel the discs just leave, and they pushed out. And I was like, "Oh, I've done this before." And I went back and watched the video. I'm like, "Man, my hips are rotated. Well, I'm not sure why I'm doing that." Right. And I go see my chiropractor, and he's like, "Yeah, when you got out of the boot, you didn't fix things." I'm like, "Yeah." So I go, the back is so bad that I can't even get out of bed one day to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It took me 30 minutes to go there and back, to go from the bed to the bathroom and back. And I was like, oh my God. So you go to the doctor, then you're meeting with a surgeon. They're saying, hey, all the stenosis inside your spine, we need to go inside there and essentially rotor-rooter it out because it's touching up against the nerve. We're going to do some decompression, get the disc back in, but you need surgery. And I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely. Even the doctor said, "Hey, I am your last resort. Like, go everywhere else but me." And I work with Josh Healy, and he's a big proponent of Stuart McGill's methods, and he just Stuart McGilled me back up, and I just worked the disc back in, and everything was fine, and my back, healed. A few months later, I had a blood clot, and so I'm like, all right, I've had enough strikes that at some point you're told you can't play anymore. And so for me, I still train upper body a few days a week, train lower body a few days a week, do some conditioning. And like you said, my lower body stuff is I'm in a belt squat. So I'll squat in there so I don't have to load my spine. Or I could do a lot of lunges or step ups, but even my hinging or good mornings, whatever in the belt squat, my legs are healthy, they're stronger, right? I can do plenty of rows and pull ups and chin ups for my back. Maybe do some light carries for some conditioning. I can press overhead and horizontally too. So bench and overhead press is good. So to your point, you get to find a new why. And honestly, it took me about 6-8 months before I was comfortable with articulating it. I'm running the gym, but I'm also not working towards any new targets. So the target was, all right, you've competed amateur strongman, you're really heavy. Let's get healthier. Let's lose, a bunch of fat, and some muscle. Let's get healthier because you have a 6 kids you want to see walk down the aisle or graduate from college. You want to see that, can you make impact with other athletes, et cetera. Like my dad was sick at 58 and dead at 62. I'm like, well, shoot, man, I'm only 10, 12 years away from that. So make some new adjustments and you live through other folks. So when people say, hey, why are you working with kids or why are you working with adults? It's because this is still what I love to do, is working with people, getting them better. And it's a lot of times just moving the needle from beginners to intermediate, or we don't deal with too much from elite to advanced or advanced to elite, right? Except for our college athletes that play sports, but there's a lot of value in there. And it's like, all right, so now I can have an impact. I can still stay healthy, but I still feed the need. I can feed it by getting other athletes better. Right.
Yep.
And so I identify a lot with what you just listed there, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I would say the one thing that probably is hard for me is that it happened while I was so young. Like I would,
Right.
when I talked to Dave Tate, I mean, I was at the point that I had a 1377 total. The only power lifter I had ever lost to in my life was the Ant, or people know as Richard Hawthorne. I'm the only person that's ever been beating Richard Hawthorne head to head at a meet going into deadlift. So he was the former world record holder at 132. and I went to Raw Unity. This was in 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. And some kid that nobody's ever heard of. I mean, Dave believed in me, but some kid that nobody ever heard of. I mean, I was 24, maybe somewhere around there. I don't know what, doing the math. Maybe I was 25. Out squatted Richard Hawthorne, out benched Richard Hawthorne. He kind of had an oh shit moment because he didn't know what I was going to pull. But my deadlift sucked compared to his. But at the same time, like that was kind of the thing that got me a little bit of notoriety, was that I was just, I was just working behind the scenes and not putting it on social media, which wasn't as big as it is now. But that really motivated me. I looked up to him. He was the guy that was doing what I wanted to do, and to be on the same platform with him and going toe to toe with him was very motivating to me. But at the same time, to see that cut short really hurt me. But after that squat, if I would have taken that as my main lift, I'd been at 14. His total was at like 1460 something, which gives you an idea of how stupid strong he was. Squat world record, deadlift world record, and he benched enough to be able to be there. But I had a serious conversation with Dave that I'm drug free. If I get on drugs, can I take down Richard Hawthorne? And that was a serious conversation that we had. And for me, the benefits of taking drugs to beat somebody, the only person to me that I needed to beat, didn't make sense. I was thinking a little bit long term about my health at that point. I had already done more than I'd ever thought. If someone would have told me at Purdue, you're going to break an all-time world record squat, I would have called them a liar. No way. Wouldn't have ever thought that I would get to 560, whatever I got to. So I had already done more than what I wanted to do. And that's kind of ultimately, once I started the back issues, like, you know what? If I look back, it wasn't a 20-year lustrous career like some lifters have, but I did more in those 5 years than what a lot of people will do in 20. And I think that's ultimately what made me say, it's okay to not get on the platform. And I'm being part of Elite FTS, like you said, I can help other lifters hopefully not go through me. I know that statistically, they're not going to be an all-time world record holder, but they could be that person like me that was just hiding somewhere and nobody knew anything about. But can we get them to slow down a little bit, educate them on low back health, all that kind of stuff, like with the McGill stuff, what have you, get people to slow down a little bit. That's where I think from a powerlifting perspective, where I try to help my lifters that I work with see stuff, because I do get the younger population. I'm only, low 30s. So I have a little bit of a lure that I've done what they want to do, but I'm not 50. I'm not the old guy that was only in multiply. I came up at the perfect time where I have multiply experience from being around those people, but I also have the raw experience because I came in when it got popular. And so that's kind of how I justify from a powerlifting perspective. Like you said, I'm not on the platform like I want to be, but I know enough to help people get to where I was. So that's kind of like my driving factor in the powerlifting world anyways.
So what percentage of your business are you working with strength athletes, and what percentage are you working with just simply student athletes that play, they're in a sport that's not powerlifting. They lift and train to improve their sport, that's not their actual sport.
Right. So I've got 28 remote clients. That's my cap. So I'm basically full. So some of those do train at my gym. So I would say they're hybrid. Essentially, I do their training, but I don't actually train them in person. If they obviously come over and ask for help, I'm obviously going to give them coaching cues. If I see something look like crap, I'm going to fix it. But the powerlifting is probably maybe 25%. I mean, let's be honest, when I'm working with kids, one, working with people in person is going to generate a lot more revenue. But the powerlifters that I do have, they've got extended access to my facility, so I may only see them once a week. I'm seeing them through a screen more than I would like, but they do know, hey, if I need help, I will just get a hold of Brandon and I'll make sure that I'm there at the same time they are. So I sometimes wish it was more. There's a competitive gym in town that tries to duplicate us. And we didn't used to have the extended access. And the main reason we had it was people were just choosing them because of convenience. I was like, it's couple $1,000s to get an extended access store and get this all to work. Let's just bite the bullet and do it and hope we get some of these guys back. Unfortunately, haven't. But I think some people don't know what quality coaching in powerlifting or quality training even looks like. With the way powerlifting is now, it's squat, bench, deadlifting, USAPL. That's what it is. And if that's not my background, I don't have a name in USAPL. I don't believe the whole drug-free allure like a lot of them do. I believe, I'm a drug-free guy. I want to be the best. I'm going against the drug people. That's just the way that's the way my mind works. I know that's not how everybody's mind works. They want that even playing field. I could care less about that. But, I also think that they don't understand, again, the longevity that's there. When I look at the USAPL, I have a very hard time finding anybody that's been in there more than 5 to 8 years. You're not going to find somebody that's 45 at a high level in the USAPL. You're just not. Because when you squat, bench, and deadlift 3 times a week, your body can't do that sustainably. And that's not a knock on USAPL, but that's just how those lifters train. They try to take a weightlifting based approach and apply it to powerlifting. It's great for fast progress, but it's not sustainable progress. And that's, ultimately that's what led me to conjugate stuff, which people say, oh, well, you got hurt. Well, I got hurt from a freak accident, not because of sustainability. I can still train. My bench is, I just benched 335 at Elite FTS, and the last time I took anything over 300 was 8 months ago. So I mean, the proof's in the pudding that if I really want to hit a big single on any given day in the right atmosphere, I can do it. So from the training perspective, I wish I had more powerlifters, and that's kind of what we're trying to figure out, how to get more of them. From a business perspective, it's passive income. The lights are on whether they're there or not. So from a business perspective, that's nice, but it also lets us grow our team and our group of athletes. And I think it gets the sport to stay in the direction that it used to be, rather than, again, going the squat, bench, deadlift 2 or 3 times a week kind of thing for each lift, or, all the time. But that's a hard thing for me to break because it's trendy. And anything that's trendy, like TikTok or whatever, you're going against the grain. It's going to be a long haul. But again, if you play the long ball, those will come and go over time, right? So that's kind of where we look at our strength athletes. And again, to answer your question, for the youth athletes, they are probably like 70 to 70, and personal training are 70-75% of our business. And then those other guys are the 20-25%. And that's just because I'm a meathead. If I was not a meathead, I'd kick them out in a heartbeat. But I love the people that we have. They're amazing people. But from a business perspective, I had to make a business decision. That's obviously the population that I would give up first, because I can still work with them online and still do what I want to do. But we have that space because that's what I like. And I didn't have that in Terre Haute when I grew up. And had I had thirst to train with people like that, who knows what my total would have been, because I brought all the people. For me to make that progress, I brought people to my garage. I mean, we had a crew of like 6 or 7 people, and that's what made me better, was having people hold me accountable, tell me where my depth was, give me coaching cues. Hey, you can put another dime on each side. Don't stop now. That kind of stuff. That to me is worth a lot, and I wanted to be able to duplicate that. Never going to have a West Side in my gym, but that's kind of being at West Side. I saw what that did, and I thought if I could bring that behind me, then I could help other lifters. And I've had other guys that have gone on to do similar stuff to me, maybe not all-time world records, but they've squatted, benched, and deadlift more than they ever thought possible, because we had the coaching and the crew aspect of powerlifting.
When I talk to athletes, I'll make statements like, when they say, "Hey, I want to play at the D1 level, or I want to compete, at CrossFit regionals or beyond," and I'll respond with, "There's a lot of components that make that up, but without a team of 3 or 4 people pushing you, you can't get there."
100%
I'll say,
agree.
I can coach you. I have the equipment. We have the time. We have facility. You have the money to pay for everything. If you don't have 3 or 4 people pushing you, there's no chance. And when I was squatting at my heaviest, I'm going to have multiple people protecting me, and I got multiple people watching me, because I need people to figure out what I'm doing. Maybe not necessarily wrong, but I could be a little more efficient. Or I got to see where the breakdown is. Let's say it's on a squat where I'm slow coming out the bottom, or slow at the top, or I shift whatever, so I can know what accessories to program. Because if I don't see where the breakdown is, I don't know how to add in the proper accessories. So then, without the proper accessories, I can't improve. You stall out. So I say, without the crew pushing you, holding you accountable, like you said, but also having the knowledge to say, hey, this is not right. This could be better. Without that whole knowledge base, you cannot get there.
Right.
There's no chance.
I think from a youth athlete perspective on that, because we get a lot of kids like that too. That's one of my questions that I ask them, especially if they're in high school. If they're in middle school, I'll let it go. I'm not so as interested at middle school. But if they're like a freshman or a sophomore, one of my questions is, I say, do you want to play in college? It's not going to hurt my feelings if you say no, but the way I'm going to train and communicate to you is going to be different than if you do that with another kid. Because, statistically, 5 to 7% of kids will go on to play at the collegiate level. It's a very small percentage just by itself. But the next question is the ones that are going to the Purdue's, the Ohio States, if you're talking big time Division I program, what are you doing to outwork 99 of every 100 kids? Because that's what it's going to take to do that. And some of it is genetics. That has to be a 100% honest understanding. But at the same time, every time you walk into the gym, that almost has to be your mindset. Because with your facility and my facility, let's take that for example. Let's say we've got a total, I don't know how many active kids we have right now. We'll just say 60 to 70 at the most. Out of those 60 kids, statistically speaking, we have a higher percentage that's going to go on to play at the collegiate level. That's the way it works. We're a funnel system. We take that 5 to 7%, and we've got more of them. So now, let's say that goes to 25% are going to go play at the collegiate level. You've got to outwork every 4. You've got to be the hardest worker at a minimum. If not, you need to be the hardest worker probably out of every 10 to 15. So every time you're in, you basically need to be the hardest working kid in there without there being a question. The way that you approach your warm-ups, your weights, your plyometrics, whatever it is. When you come in, we ask you what you ate. Is your nutrition, in the top 1 out of 100? Is your sleep in the top 1 out of 100? Is your effort in your schoolwork the top 1 out of the 100? If those questions are no, then you don't want the Division I as bad as you think you do. Because there are kids that are like, I do want this. This is what I really genuinely want to do, and they have no issues doing it. Good examples, we had a kid that ended up going to Harvard, plays football there. Just statistically, to even get accepted from an academic perspective is very, very hard, let alone have the athletic skill to play football. And he actually plays rugby too, which is very impressive. But to play football at an Ivy League school, on top of this kid's dad and mom left him. So he's lived with grandma his entire life. They were drug addicts. The kid had no introduction to football until 8th grade. So I would say for most football players that play at the high school level, he's 4 years behind in terms of the knowledge of the game on there. He's never played any sport as a sport team until 8th grade because he couldn't afford it. And so by the time he got to high school, everyone say the odds are stacked against that kid. But you want to talk about a kid that always kept his head in the books. Grandma at least kept him right there. Keep your head down, work on your school. But he knew what it was like to have to struggle from an actual life perspective, and he applied that to everything he did. He was the kid, didn't matter what time of school, 3 days a week, 6 a.m., he was then working with me. He had no excuse. Wrestling season, didn't care. Football season, didn't care. Track season, didn't care. Summer, he was still in at 6 a.m. It's a routine. This is the way it is. Nobody else is in at 6 a.m. I want to go to Harvard. That was his goal. That he applied to every Ivy League school. Nobody else wanted him, but Harvard was the one that took him. That's the one he wanted. So, I mean, he's a good example when people tell me they want something, like, that's what it looks like. It was easy to tell that this kid was going to go do something. Maybe it wasn't going to play football, but he was at least going to make sure that he got his education and put his life on the right path. And I think when I see stuff like that, that's what I want. I want to try to have more of an impact on kids like that. It's very hard to do that, but he's an extreme example. But I think if every kid looked at that and said, you know what, I can do that kind of effort. I can show up at 6 a.m. 2 days a week to do my strength and conditioning with when I have my license. I can get my homework done. I can work on my nutrition. I can do a little bit more from a stay after practice and get more shots up, whatever it is. I think there's always something more there, but I think kids just don't. The allure of Division I, Division II, whatever it is there, but the mindset part of what it takes to do that. There's not very many people that can tell them what it takes. They'll say, oh, you got to work hard. But what does work hard look like? The kid that went to Harvard, that's what work hard looks like to me. That's the
I try to quantify things as much as possible. That way I can tell them, hey, this is really what hard work, this is what the math is behind hard work. And they'll say, well, give me an example. I say, sure. My son Jackie had a home game at Ball State this past Saturday. And the team is always locked up in a hotel, even for a home game. somewhere in town so that there's no distractions.
Right. Yep.
Right. So they're locked in. They have their meal, their dinner. They have their walkthrough. They have their meetings, and then it's about 8 o'clock at night. And so I give him a call. I go, hey, well, how's it going? He goes, I'm good. Only got about 10 minutes. I go, what's up? He goes, I got about a 2.5 hour window before I need to be to sleep, but I need to get all this homework done. I go, so you're Friday night locked in the hotel room, you're just doing homework? He goes, well, yeah, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and we have to do the whole pomp and circumstance before kickoff. It's homecoming. And then there's, 2 hours of warm-ups, and then there's the game itself, 3.5 hours. Yeah, then there's all the meetings, and you got to shovel in more food. So no one's doing anything Saturday night because you're exhausted. Sunday morning, you got to lift, and you got team meetings. You're going over film from the prior game. So class still comes Monday morning. So yeah, Friday night's homework. And I tell kids that in high school, and they're like, what? I go, it doesn't get easier.
No.
The coach is making it gets $500,000 at a D1 at a max school. He needs wins, right?
Yep.
All the coaches need wins. So he's getting everything they can out of these people. So let's quantify how many hours of sleep you really need. Let's quantify, how much water you need. Or can we just look at and say, do you have your urine look like a light lemonade? Let's quantify amount of protein. Let's quantify how much less screen time you get on your phone. And they're saying, this is what that looks like. So when they come in, or a parent will ask me, say, well, give me what's the one thing that makes my kid go to D1 school? I go, the one thing is that there isn't one thing. So if you can get that through your head, you've got a better shot. But two, if I'm going to build a D1 athlete from whatever, and I got 4 or 5 years to do that, I'm going to say, all right, the one thing, here's how I would do that. The kid's going to play 2 sports. He's not going to just play one. He's going to play 2 that are complementary so that neurologically he's going to be a better athlete. 2, he has to be strong as can be, because most kids are not strong. They can't handle the load or the demand of their sport. They have tremendous injuries right now. So just the longevity of playing in high school, let alone college, if your kid's body's more resilient, doesn't have the big setback. He needs to eat a ton of protein and a ton of sleep and not be on his phone so much. So let's just start there. And the last component is, how willing is he? How capable and willing is he to strain under duress? Because everyone's going to give up at some point.
Yep.
They're going to say, "Hey, I did enough push-ups, or I did enough homework, and I'm done. Or I made it to varsity high school, or I made it to D3 in college, or D2 or D1, or maybe I made it to the pros." But at some point, they're all going to give up. But how long can you hold on and do more that other people aren't doing? Like Urban Meyer would say, everything you do plus 2, right? Yep. So how long can you strain or be uncomfortable with getting enough food in, right? How about just making sure that you do all the 10 things so you can sleep better? Or are you going to be good enough to watch enough film to get yourself and your guys next to you on your position group better? Are you going to do all those things? If you can hold on and strain longer and longer than everybody else and they have that mindset, then if you don't get injured, then you got a shot.
Yep.
You got a shot.
Yeah, I think.
So talk about.
Go ahead.
One thing I like to talk about when I say your kid needs to play 2 sports, I get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of people wanting to play one sport year round. And the example I give is that couple that at my age, we had rec league and we had CYO league. And if you were good, you got to play travel. You got to play travel all-stars,
Yep.
which extended your season maybe 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks tops before the next season rolled around. So if you're playing travel all-stars, then you get the extra reps. You're gonna elevate yourself and separate. So you're probably playing in high school at the varsity level, and you're one of the better kids. So then you probably got a shot in college. Well, now so many kids play travel ball 7, 8, 9, 10 months a year. It waters down the actual leagues, and now that's no longer the separator. Most don't train. So now you're having this tons of demand from their sport on their body when the body isn't built to be able to handle the repetitive use. And if they would have just lifted, that would have been that's now the separator, because people aren't doing it. It'd be like, if no one's drinking water and I get you to drink water, you win, right? So if no one's lifting, I can make you the strongest or the most resilient or the fastest kid in your team, then you're probably going to win. Just do a little bit less of your sport specific stuff add in a couple more days of lifting so that you're sound and then you're resilient. So then you hit the ball further, or you run faster, or when you get hit, you don't break.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. The
What kind of, I know it's a worldwide industry and endeavor with all the sports, but we're only an hour away. I got to believe you're still seeing the same things in Terra Haute that I'm seeing here in Indianapolis.
it's bad. It's so bad. The multiple sports conversation is something we try to have. Usually, for the first thing is like after we do that initial assessment, a question that we get commonly is, what do we need to do at home? Anything extra I can do at home? So really, from a training perspective, in here with us, you don't need to do anything else there. We're going to check that box. We're going to fill it up the most optimal way that it can be done. So you don't have to worry about that. You don't need to do extra lunges or extra push-ups. If a kid's 10 or 11, it probably won't hurt you to do extra push-ups. But, generally this is more the kids that are a little older trying to do stuff. We obviously have like that sleep talk. Hey, you need to get to bed sooner. I don't care what the answer is. Go to bed half an hour to an hour sooner if you can. Get off your phone less and eat more protein. Those are the top 3 recommendations we give pretty much every kid. If you're checking that protein box, getting the sleep, you're working hard in here, and you're getting a little bit more sleep, you're basically taking free steroids at this point, because most kids aren't doing that. So like you said, you're going to be doing one extra thing there. But the other thing is, if it's not too late to recommend it, do other sports, especially the younger kids. Like you're a baseball player, you're playing baseball all the time, play basketball, do cross country, find wrestling, do tennis. I really don't care what it is at that kind of level. Just do something. Ideally, they would complement each other. So, if you have play change of direction sport like basketball, picking up tennis would be great. You're going to learn how to work well in small spaces. But, at the end of the day, we understand that if the kid likes it, they're more likely to do it. So if you can just do something you like, that's the first one. But if you can find a complementary one, that's even better. So yeah, we for sure see that one sport. I mean, we have a kid that is 11 years old that has chronic low back problems already. And guess what? He's only played baseball. Not a single other sport has been in his repertoire. Now, he has gone outside and shot some baskets, but he's never played on a true basketball team. And, we've had to have tough conversations that he needs to do other stuff. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know, anything. I don't care what he does. Like, can he run a mile? Probably not. Well, that's probably one thing I would start with is, he needs to be in a good cardiovascular shape to be able to run a mile. I can't imagine being 11 or 12 and being so specific into a sport that you can't run a mile. That's not good. Obviously he's at the point now where like, we're not seeing him right now because he has to go to an ortho to figure out what's going on. I mean, from a liability standpoint, if he's having these issues, this is not my job to fix your lower back. As a lower back person, I feel like I'm very educated in this stuff, but that's outside my scope from a legal standpoint. You go through ortho, you go to PT, and then like we were talking about, Lucas, was that return to play process. That's when we'll come in. That's when we'll do our job. But the fact that position even occurred, I just can't imagine whenever I was 11 having low back problems or not playing multiple sports or not going outside and doing things activity wise. I think that's now been replaced, like you said, the travel sport conundrum, that this is 7 to 10 months out of the year that they're playing the same sport. They're led to believe with all this hype and showcase stuff that this is going to get their kids because, all these showcases, this kid went to go play at IU and this kid's getting recruited by Michigan and this kid's getting recruited to Alabama. Yeah, they're the outlier. They're just playing travel sports. I want to know about the kid that walked into travel sports, was at the very bottom of your prospect league, and is now at the top. That's what I want to see, because there's no development in this. This is just literally taking a kid, taking talent identification, putting them on a team, and they're on that team for these many years, and they don't ever move up or down. That it's literally a talent identification thing, which you can find those kids really easily. Just go to a high school game and watch the kid that's got the highest batting average, throws the highest velo, plays the best positions. Those are the best athletes. There's the talent identification. I don't need a travel team to tell me that. The statistics do it for me, especially in baseball with how much stats there are. So I think parents are almost fed into, if I pay this much money, it's going to get my kid views and that's going to get them to college. I'm going to see a return on investment. Statistically, the way it is now, no, you're not. You might as well just put that money in your pocket and go on vacation and chill out and relax and get some time away from your kids. I think it'd be a better investment of your time and your money. But
It's still just 5 to 7% play D1 sports.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Now you
Yeah,
just
it doesn't
have
matter.
now it
Yep.
doesn't matter. Now we have millions of kids versus 100,000 kids trying to play D1 sports. Now we just have more kids, and it's still the same funnel.
Yep.
It's still the same percentage,
Yep.
right? So, but everyone knows who the strongest kid is on the team.
Yep.
Everyone knows who the fastest kid is on the team.
Yep.
And I could say, well, quantifiably, let's just do that. What if I took your talent and I made you the strongest or fastest kid on the team? Is that good? Yeah, right. Yep. Are you now noticeable? Yeah. Yep. Everyone knows that you can throw it from center to home plate. And also, people know if you can't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're the one that can, right. So let's just do that.
Yeah, and
then there's
everyone's doing lessons and stuff too. So like, well, you might have some skill sports where like if you're a pitcher, I think going to take pitching lessons is not a bad thing. But if you're not doing other sports, you're not doing strength and conditioning or any speed-based agility work. You're not eating well, you're not sleeping well. Why are you going to spend $50 an hour on pitching lessons when you could get that 3 to 5 mile an hour velo by just training 2 times a week for a year? I mean, that's like it's a lower cost investment per hour. It's a more long-term sustainable investment. 2 times a week for a year isn't sexy, but if you get your legs behind you when you pitch, then when you go to that specialist, when you're a junior or you're senior, to fine tune those things, because you're already throwing harder than everybody because you've got the velo part, you just need the placement. Now those little things are going to make a difference. But now the pitching coach, for this example, doesn't have to worry about does he have the horsepower. He's got the horsepower. Now we just need arm slot, fingers, angle, exit velo, all that kind of stuff that they measure. Now you're going to take that skill and it's going to be amplified even more. So you might be a 95 or an 85 mile an hour guy by senior year. You might be low 90s. Guess what? Alabama, Tennessee, SEC, they're going to come knocking if you're throwing low 90s and you got placement on a ball. You can't teach that. You just can't. So then at the college level too, if you show that you've got that work ethic and the skill part is just kind of missing, there's a lot of upside. I think that's the way you best see it on football or ESPN. Kids have upside.
Sure.
The upside, what they're talking about, is the kid has the raw physical components to be an awesome athlete. They just don't have fine-tuned skill stuff. And that's what they do at the college level. That's why kids redshirt. They've got the stuff that they need, but they don't have the little bit of talent. Well, guess what? An extra year added on
that goes in the sport, right?
With that coaching staff, 10, 12, 15 hours a week with all the practice they do, they're getting all what they need now at a developed level where they can handle it. But parents are almost trying to flip that on its end, that we want to do all the skill acquisition at 12, 13, 14. And then at college, they'll grow up, they'll eat more food, they'll gain weight. No, the best time to gain weight is now, because that's what's going to help you the most. I mean, like you said, stick out in front of the crowd from a physical perspective, and that alone will garnish you the recruit. You still got to be good at your sport. Can't deny that. But you don't have to go into the minutia early on. Take the broad base of your pyramid and build that up so that when you need that skill acquisition, it's just going to be amplified long term.
Yeah, you'll see them with a great skill set, and they're throwing, and 3 innings in, it's all gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Or 4 innings in because they don't have the power or the sustainability, or they got a dead arm, and because they can't handle the load. So there is no upside because they've already maxed it out.
Yes. Yep.
Like you take a senior or junior in high school wrestler, and he comes to you, Brandon, and he goes, "Hey, I need to get better at my sport. Can you help me with some wrestling?" And let's say you're a wrestling coach, and you look at the kid, and what can you do physically? Well, I got a 405 back squat with a ball, or a box squat, and I can do 15 weighted pull-ups, and I'm a 2 times body weight bencher, and I can do weighted GHDs with 1 times body weight. So you take someone who's a physical specimen but doesn't have the actual knowledge in the sport. Well, now we're just pumping all the knowledge, and it's easy because he has that base. It's just it's the opposite of the way it is now. Now, what I love about, you mentioned Louis, what I loved about him and his approach, and I actually never met him, but just videos and talked with Tom and books and everything else. But he takes these simple laws or rules and just over applies them ad nauseum and on the basics until you max out and you plateau. So when he says something like, "You're only as strong as your weakest link," well, it's one of the most basic things out there, and it's a quote that stands the test of time because it's true. So when you have a weak link, like they can't last past 3 innings, well, then you're done, right? That's
Yep.
your limiting factor. It's a definition of what a weak link is, or a limiting factor. It holds you back. You can't progress past that. So if you can't fix that or elevate that weak link, it's over. So once it's exposed, stop doing everything else you're doing because this thing has literally stopped you.
Yes. Yep.
You're done. You're broken. I've always been on for a while, and I can talk meathead stuff, training kids stuff, hours and hours, right? So
Yep.
good time. One thing that you would say, mindset wise for athletes, that's makes a bigger impact. I never like to say what's the one thing ever. So what's a thing mindset wise that you found that's moves the needle more than most?
I mean, we kind of discussed a little bit about being able to do more. I think this a little bit of a generational thing, but I think they don't know how to truly push themselves mentally in what they're doing. So like they need to be once you get to the high school level, there's going to be a point where you're going to be tired and you have to do things. That's part of being an adult. And I think the quicker that athletes can understand that you're going to have that mental thing like I want to stop, you have to learn to understand that why are you wanting to stop? Are you physically needing to stop, or do you mentally need to stop? Are you from a nutrition standpoint, is that holding you back while you stop? I think mentally there's other things that lead to that mental portion. Some of that could just be mental conditioning that you've never been pushed outside your comfort zone, and that's something that I talk with my wife that our marriage works well is because we're good at doing that to each other. You know, I may not, it's nighttime. The last thing I want to do is put away the dishes. But you know what? She's going to ask me to do that anyways, even though I hate to do it, because when the dishes are put away tomorrow morning, when she gets up and she makes breakfast or whatever, it's empty for the next load that can go in. It's a very small, minute task that seems very stupid, but I hate doing dishes, but she's going to push me outside that comfort zone to do that because for the better good of the gander, it's going to make our teamwork work. And same thing for her. Like I
Sure.
push her to do things from a business perspective that she's usually not comfortable. This weekend, she's been working on an article to send to Elite FTS. Well, I know the editor, the person that publishes it. She knows her too. But I said, hey, Sheena, Adrian's working on an article. Should she email that to you or does she need to go through the standard process? So I kind of put Adrian on a hard spot. One, she's got to make sure her article's finished the way she wants. Now she's got somebody that knows that it exists, but now she can actually understand that she has the person to send it to, and that put her outside her comfort zone because she wouldn't have asked that question. And so at the end of the day, that helps her. So I think for many athletes, from a mental perspective, is getting outside of your comfort zone more frequently, because the more you do that, then you don't have an issue getting outside your comfort zone. I think you see that a lot in sports, football, baseball. Oh, they're not comfortable being in this position. Well, get in that position so that when it happens, you're not as uncomfortable. And I try to, we do that through our exercise selection. Like you said, picking the weakest links. When we're picking exercises, we pick what the athletes need, not what they want to do. It's not comfortable to maybe do a front squat because you suck at it. But guess what? You need to be more vertical. You need more quads in your squat. We need a front squat. That's going to help you be a better athlete. Sucks, but that's kind of the way that it goes in the training room. So, getting outside your comfort zone from a mental perspective, but doing that more. And then I think learning how to choose mentally upstairs that you want to get out of your comfort zone, that you understand that there's long-term benefits to that, whatever that might be, house chores or sports. It doesn't really matter.
So I go back to and I quantify things. So I give people targets because I say, well, you got to be mentally tougher. It's too broad, or you need to last longer. Again, too broad. If I say, hey, everyone's going to lift with the team, and we're going to lift for an hour, we're going to get all our accessories done, and whatever. If you're trying to be the number one or the 1%er on your team, because only 2% play D1, so you be in the top 1 or 2%. All right, and you're on this lifting team at Thirst. You're gonna do everything else, and then you're gonna stay back, and you're gonna do a little bit extra. Maybe you have a weakness with your core or your back, or you can do some extra grip strength, something small, right? So you're gonna outlift everybody else. You can do more, and then you're gonna talk to someone else who's recovers really, really well, and you're asking them how much sleep do they get, how much water do they take, and you're gonna find out what you need, and you're gonna do a little bit more. and you're going to find out, someone who's better at your sport, and you don't maybe necessarily have the knowledge to play linebacker. You're maybe not the smartest at linebacker, but you're really physically great. So you're going to ask your coach for a mentor in addition to someone, in addition to the overall team, so you can pump in more knowledge. And then I'll say, all right, so then you're going to find out who's eating the best, and you're going to out-eat that person on a performance level, right? So I'm going to give you these 6 different metrics, and you have to beat whoever's great at all this. You have to beat that person. So like, if you're a DB, all right, I want you lifting. If you can handle it, lift with a lineman, right? As an example. And if I can quantify and say, hey, move the needle here, then if I have you winning in all these different areas, then overall you have that mentality that I'm going to compete.
Yeah.
And if I'm always competing, then you're going to hold on a little bit longer. So you're the one that wants to win all the sprints or all the gassers. And when everyone's bitching and moaning, you're first on the line, right? How can you take, as David Goggins say, how can you take someone else's soul in this event? How can you outlast a little bit longer and push a little bit harder in practice today, or in the weight room, or at home, or with your homework or whatever? Or can you go talk to a coach and work on your communication or personal skills more than everybody else? I keep moving the needle, and I quantify it, and then, all right, then we have a target. So then they have something they can actually shoot towards.
Yeah, 100%. There was just a good, it's on Instagram, but Ohio State, there's a clip from NCAA Wrestling, Ohio State's coach, and they were doing a 30-minute drill for wrestling. I've only ever had to do one, and it was obviously not at this level of Ohio State. But essentially, it's you wrestle for 30 minutes straight, and it's with your partner.
That is a marathon level of workload.
It is
30
insane.
minutes is insane.
It's insane.
Insane.
But his rules were, you're just going to keep score to yourself, and you can stop. You can stop when you both mutually agree that you can't do it anymore. If you think you can keep going, then you keep pounding the shit out of them. That's their problem, not yours. And if you're the person that needs to give up, then you know what you need to do to be, in this case, a better wrestler. But if you apply this to anything, then you know what your weak link is, like we just talked about. So if you're in a competition with somebody, like you're saying, if you can hang with them, then good for you. This is the right spot. But if you're also in a group of something that you're the guy wanting to give up in that 30-minute drill, then you found what your weak link is. But I think that's obviously he's trying to get, like you say, like getting a lot of work and a lot of volume in, but he's also getting the mental training while still getting better at the sport of wrestling in this case, which is phenomenal. I mean, a 30-minute drill, just wrestling. But I mean, had my coach told me that, that's something that I would have been like, holy crap, this is hard. But I was also the guy that probably would have tried to obliterate my partner. That's just how I was.
I would have taken the approach, I'm going to score so many points in a row that he just kind of gives up. So 7 minutes in, he doesn't want 23 more.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't want to have to go. I don't want to go 30 minutes. I want to win. I'd rather just come in and smash him so badly that, hey, you just give up.
Exactly.
Right?
And
because 30 minutes.
Yeah. The people that are like that, if you happen to be an athlete that listens to this and you feel like that's you need to surround yourself with more people like that. Because then now imagine how valuable that 30 minutes would be. Versus if you have somebody that's I don't want to call them a quitter, but you have somebody that's not to your level and they stop at that 10 minutes. Well, now you have 20 minutes that you lost. That the other person, your competition, that Division I guy, is getting. So you need to find that other quote unquote Division I or as close as you can person to, I don't want to say be your sidekick, but be the person that helps you elevate and grow. Like you were saying, find that nutrition person that you need to try to be by, that recovery person that you need to be by. Gravitate towards those people, and that will elevate everything that you have. And it's also just going to keep you in check. You're going to know really quickly whether you're doing a good job or not, because the high performer is going to be doing it and you're not, and it's going to stand out because you're seeing them more consistently, whether it be in practice or on film or whatever.
Plus, it not only conditions your mind so you don't quit, but you're on this stage. So when Ohio State plays Michigan, or you see like Oklahoma State in wrestling versus Iowa, it's one-on-one. The lights are going. It's a big deal. Like it's a big deal, and the moment, and everyone's in on this big deal. So when you know that this 30-minute test is coming, you're not thinking about it the morning of. You're thinking about it, man. It's probably on a calendar well more than a week in advance.
Right.
A couple days getting closer, you're like, oh man, I need more sleep. I need to do this. It's coming. And then practice is getting ready to start. And you notice 30 minutes is coming, like heads are down, eyes are down. They have that long distance stare. And because people are in this tunnel, this dark vision tunnel, and all they see is target, right?
Yep.
Because it's 30 minutes of just suffering, and you're just like, go, because you're turning off all the pain and all the distractions, and it's just focused on that target, which helps prepare you for those big one-on-one, those dual meets. So that's awful, but amazing, right? Yep. Favorite thing to listen to when you train?
I'm usually more of a rap and rock kind of guy. I drift towards rap though, especially like early to mid 2000s.
Gotcha. Young kid. And if you and your and Adrian could go somewhere on a bucket list trip, where would you guys go?
We want to go to
Egypt. You haven't been there yet.
Yeah,
Egypt.
Yep.
You've never been there?
Nope.
That's where you guys want to go. Okay. Favorite sports movie?
Remember the Titans?
Favorite sport? So wrestling, or is it powerlifting?
I'm weird. I don't really classify powerlifting as a sport.
Okay.
That's kind of a long story, but like of actual sports, I would say wrestling.
Favorite athlete to watch?
So growing up, mine was Allen Iverson.
Awesome wrestler.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, that's so I have a basketball background as a kid, but Allen Iverson, I feel like if I had to pick one or two people from the NBA that would be dogs in wrestling, probably him and Dennis Rodman. Right.
Dennis Rodman.
Really hard,
absolutely Rodman. Just
hard nose work ethic. And that's kind of how I gravitated towards any sport, was just that really hard work ethic. And
favorite superhero?
Iron Man.
And villain?
Yeah, I put Thanos.
Is that right?
Yep.
Favorite lift? Favorite all-time lift?
Oh, squat for sure.
Mine is Atlas Stone. If you had $10 million, would you do anything differently, or would you still be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I'd still be doing what I was doing. I'd probably have more toys and stuff, but I'm not going to trade my job.
Yeah, good. Cool. Brandon, thanks for the time. Very generous with your knowledge. Really, every time I talk to you, it's been valuable. So thank you so much for taking the time and sharing this, and let's do this again.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate it. Always good to talk shop on anything. So good to meet you guys. And anytime you need something, just reach out.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you.